The British film Trainspotting has become one of the most talked about and eagerly anticipated films of the summer. New York film critic Anthony Lane wrote that the film's unwashed visionary cinema feels alarmingly new. In the UK, Trainspotting has become one of the highest-grossing films in British history, but has also inspired a lot of protests. Joining me now are the film's director, Danny Boyle, producer Andrew Macdonald, and screenwriter John Hodge. Welcome, one and all. What is it about this film that has made it so talked about? It's not the first film that people have criticized because they think it doesn't come down hard enough on drug usage, in this case heroin. It's not the first film that doesn't have language, that doesn't have... What is it that makes this film so talked about?
Well, I mean, we have to bow to the book, really, which is where it all comes from,
All right.
and which is...
I'll hold it up now. Trainspotting by Irvin Welsh.
It is one of the most extraordinary reads, certainly, that we'd ever had, you know, and it's... I think it came out of the fact that British fiction, throughout the 80s, has kind of disappeared into this pool of self-absorption and kind of postmodern irony, which is kind of summed up by Martin Amis, you know, a truly fantastic writer. This book blazes with passion about stories, about characters, again, that don't have to be told, reminding you of the narrator or anything like that. Why
do you think the book is so powerful?
Because it's honest, really. I mean, I don't know how you, in the end, how you judge what is honest and what's not. How can you tell? But it just feels like you read it, and it blazes with honesty. And it's compelling and disturbing and revolting, and yet you want to continue with it.
Compelling. Why compelling?
Because it takes this group of people who have been sidelined, and we all do it, whether we're liberals or not. We sideline junkies. We basically say, you know, they're lower than human, really, now. Yeah. They're finished. Goodbye. And it kind of smashes them straight back into your field of vision and says, consider them again as human beings with all the complexity. You know, you mustn't just fix on them as being junkies, and that defines them. They have all the complexity and mayhem of anybody living through their 20s, you know, and early 30s.
Was it hard to translate it to film, this book, to find the kind of connective tissue that would make it work as a movie?
Well, Andrew and I thought it was a fantastic opportunity, but we didn't have to do the screenplay, which is... So we just kind of put as much pressure as possible on John.
So, well, John, was it hard for you?
Well, I wasn't very optimistic about it at first. Because Irvin's book is a collection of short stories. That's how it was conceived, rather than as a novel. So there's no really clear narrative that runs through it, and there are fantastically entertaining diversions into the lives and into the minds of other minor characters. And I felt that to try and represent that was going to build a hopelessly complex film that would be really unfollowable for an audience. However, we spent a long time talking about it, and then we settled on who we felt was the key character. That's Mark Renton, who's eventually played by Ewan McGregor in the film, and he was the book's most articulate voice. And we decided to structure a sort of narrative around a period of his life, and so that everything that wasn't in the book that related to that journey we left out. Really.
Why the controversy? What do you think it is about it that makes it so?
I think the thing that seems to have offended most people who've been offended, which tends to be in Britain, the right-wing press, has been the glamorization, or the supposed glamorization
of heroin use.
Heroin chic, as I think it's labeled even in the American press now. And I think there is a certain truth about that. Heroin does seem to have been on the rise. People seem to be taking it again.
Take the best orgasm you ever had, multiply by 1,000, and you're still nowhere near it being heroin. That glamorizes it right there, doesn't it?
But it's also being honest about it, I think, to a certain degree, because it shows both sides. That's what people. A lot of people who criticize it never went to see the film. And what we tried to show was that I think it's undeniable, a medical fact. John's a doctor, he can tell you that heroin has some positive attributes and is used in medicine every day. And it also has, especially if it's used long-term.
But the film has nothing to do with the positive uses of heroin.
No, anyone who seeks to discredit the film could selectively quote from it to make it look as though it's glamorizing heroin. The truth is that we spoke honestly about it, and we acknowledged that the characters have a reason for what they do. They start off taking heroin because it feels good, and then we acknowledge the truth of what happens to them when they go on taking it, which is pretty tragic, and the consequences are played out in full. And we felt that people would only take the consequences seriously if we had been honest about the motivation in the first place, so that rather than lecturing to people, we're presenting them with a balanced portrait, which in the end is far more effective than the traditional stereotype message, which really is just ignored by young people.
Okay. Before I take a look at a first clip, I want to talk a little bit about, the title comes from...
It comes from a very old British hobby, pointless, futile hobby, where guys stand on railway stations and write down the train numbers and then send them to other people who stand on other railway stations, and thereby you track where all the trains are in Britain.
And what's the point?
It's completely pointless because they don't work for the railways or anything like that. It's just a kind of obsessive hobby, which drugs become, of course, and also it comes to represent in the film the way men try and get a fix on the world. In the increasingly chaotic world of which we understand less and less how it works, you try and get an area of it where you feel completely in control of. Like there's a guy in the film who's obsessed with Sean Connery movies and knows everything about them. Another one who's obsessed with legal and illegal drugs. You know, another one who's obsessed with football, or what you call soccer here. And it's just a way of getting men feeling potent again, when in reality they're not.
Right. So I want you to set this up for me. This is where Tommy tries to get Renton and Spud and Sick Boy to wander Scotland's great outdoors, with him claiming it will make them proud to be Scottish. Need we know more?
No, just watch the clip, I guess.
All right, here it is. Roll tape. Beyond the life-affirming thing, what else do you want to come away with the audience about this? I mean, are you saying something about heroin?
It's more about, I mean,
or
if
about
it wasn't,
culture?
Listen, if it wasn't heroin with them, it would be something else.
Okay.
You know, it's a
so
certain...
heroin is
you know,
therefore
it's about
insignificant?
No, but it's because it's a piece of cinema in a way. It's the most, heroin is, I guess, the ultimate thing. It's the most extreme thing. It's the edge.
Look what just happened over the weekend here in New York.
Absolutely. And that's where we send people. We send our rock stars there. You know, we're complicit in that as well.
We send them where?
We send them, we want them to behave like that, I'm afraid. It'd be very nice to say that we didn't. But we don't want them
to fall into heroin?
We don't want them to have a good night's sleep after they've had a party, after they've had a concert. You go and watch them at a concert, you don't want them to have a good night's sleep. You want the president to have a good night's sleep. You want them, you know, I'm afraid, to smash up their hotel room and behave like we expect our rock idols to behave. These are the people we want to live at life, the extremes that we're all capable of, but we all probably and thankfully won't go there. But you want a certain group of people, their entertainers, the actors, to go there for you and be like that. And you watch it in the cinema and then you go home, you know, safely. And make all the normal decisions.
So there's a vicarious thing with rock stars and with film.
Yeah, of course.
All cinema is vicarious.
It's a vicarious pleasure to watch or experience.
Yes, it takes you into another world that you perhaps never actually want to go to personally, but allows you to watch it. I mean, that's the secret of so much cinema. Yeah.
And you feed off that. We all feed off that pain and joy sometimes. You know, everybody does that. It's very...
And people who pretend they're making realist films are actually still making films that provide nothing more than vicarious sort of pleasure for their audiences.
Did making this film make you want to try heroin?
We had an amazing bunch of people helping us who were ex-drug addicts, who formed their own recovery group with no government help, no methadone substitution. They'd done it through this human spirit, which somehow, in the depths, they'd managed to rekindle. And their awe and respect of this drug, which they give up day by day, they know it's always there. If they have a crisis, they might tipple back to it. Their respect for it made you think that to tinker with it in a kind of method acting kind of way would be such an insult to what they'd gone through, really. And they could tell us everything you needed to know about it, you know, and all the kind of details of use and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Did you have to, I mean, you have a expected cold turkey thing here, scene. That necessary? You think you wanted to say something, or it just was a scene that made sense to have in the film?
Well, I think if you're dealing with heroin use...
everybody says, some critics say, well, it's a predictable scene.
I mean, yes, but to miss it out would, I think, court justifiable criticism for having glossed over one aspect of heroin abuse. I mean, not everyone who withdraws from heroin goes through that cold turkey experience, but a large number do, so I think it's only reasonable to show it happening to our character.
After Shallow Grave, you could have pretty much done... most of the studios would have financed whatever you wanted to do next, yes? Or no?
Well,
or you don't
within
know?
Reason. Within reason. I think there was a certain amount what happened, especially with British directors. They wanted Danny to come and work on one of their films. Not his film, one of their films. You know, they wanted him to do like Danny Cannon did Young Americans in England and then went and did Judge Dredd.
You could have done Braveheart.
Yes.
Is that
an offer?
But you would never come.
We had this idea for a film about...
Could have, but didn't.
That's right, absolutely, yeah.
That was Academy Award, huh?
That's right. I mean, all that's very nice. But there's lots of people making those kind of films, which is great. I mean, I really enjoyed Braveheart. But there's not as many people making these kind of films.
Why are you proud of this film?
Because it upsets people, partly. And I think you've got to disrupt the spectacle a bit sometimes. Because there's many things, there's many films, like, you know, that are very comforting and confirm your worldview. Like, there's many books that do that as well. This book and this film, hopefully, just make you think for just maybe even a short time.
Okay, so beyond that, it upsets them. And so they look at this picture.
Well, it upset me reading it, you know, it disturbed me reading the book. So you try and generate...
You want to upset them leading to what? To a greater understanding of what heroin addiction is about? Or a new awareness of heroin addiction, or what? You know what I mean?
It's a new awareness of these type of characters, I guess. I mean,
these people are more than...
You can't overemphasize... You can't try and overemphasize the importance of film. It plays a pretty small part in people's lives. But for that time, you have to tell your stories and your characters with honesty, really. And don't back away from some things that we may not prefer to confront, you know? Which is that these people belong in our human perspective just as much as anybody else, even though a lot of people would prefer to sideline them, you know?
And if you went out and talked to a group of heroin users, their experience and their words and what they said and the way they acted would not be unlike what came out of this book and out of your screenplay.
Well, many of the heroin addicts we've spoken to who have seen the film have felt that it was true to the feelings
to the experience.
The experience, because the book is written as a subjective experience from the perspective of the heroin users.
Someone once said it's almost written from the perspective of the heroin itself. Watching it.
But both the book and the film...
You haven't heard that?
I haven't heard that comment.
Okay, go ahead.
They are dramatic interpretations. It's not a documentary, and it's not a diary. So it's not representative, and that's why we get a lot of criticism, because it's not social realism. We've taken using a particular style to tell the story
What's
of these
the style?
The style is, you need a genre to describe it. I'm not going to describe that. That's some critics, but we haven't taken it head on into realism, which is what people expect with a subject like this.
And what happens when you do that is you objectify these people. You turn them into victims, because I know I've done that myself. You sort of, and then you look for reasons, especially in Britain, where we're always looking for things to blame. And you look at housing estates and schooling and bad parents and all this kind of stuff. And what he does in the book is he says, oh yeah, that's all important, but the real reason is you've got to look inside Renton. You've got to be inside him and try and find out what it is about him. And you'll never truly unravel it, because it's a mystery, you know, like we all are, full of it. You know, there's things we never really reveal to anybody. But that's more use in a modern context than the old ways, you know?
So okay, let me take a look at the other clip. This is Renton, so you've mentioned him, and he's the lead here. This is where he's given up heroin and regained his sexual appetite, and he sees an attractive woman leave a club and he is at, and then he chases her into the street. Here it is, roll tape.
Now she's...
Yeah, let's just mention that point, and we'll come back to the other point. As we were talking about while watching that, the woman the young actress, you found her in a club in Glasgow?
Yeah, her name's Kelly MacDonald, and she was 18, 17 when we met her.
Yeah.
We were looking for somebody fresh, I guess is the word. You know, we met a lot of actresses, models, and they just seemed quite dead, and we wanted somebody who could bring that life to the role. And now she's a full-time actress.
And she's making a film with Elizabeth Shue from...
Leaving Las Vegas.
Leaving Las Vegas, yeah.
With Nick Cage.
And Jessica Lange. And Bob Hoskins.
So she doesn't even speak to us now.
No, she doesn't even know you anymore.
Calls
she says,
anymore.
thanks, guys, I'll be seeing you later. The point you were making is that this was a good clip to show what?
Well, the film, you know, the media says, you know, it's a heroin film. The film is actually, you know, sometimes the guys are using heroin, some of the times they're not, you know, and it's about the mayhem of that time of your life when you feel completely indestructible, you know, and so it's about your friends, it's about trying to pick up girls, it's all that kind of world, you know, and it's...
But you're not backing away from the centrality of heroin addiction as part of this film.
No, because once you're a user, you're on it and off it, but you always have a relationship with it because of the power of the drug. You know, like I said about the recovery group who said every day you just get up and you don't use it that day. You know, you can't have the overconfidence of feeling you're reformed, because come a crisis that you'll tipple backwards into it, you know?
Well, an amazing thing happens with heroin, as you know, and as the film shows, is that there are times in which heroin, in a sense, will bring some catastrophe to your life, and the only thing you can do to deal with the catastrophe is to take heroin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a scene in the film that deals with that. You know, when a tragedy occurs, and rather than dealing with it in a kind of compassionate, conventional, humane fashion, the characters simply resort to taking more heroin, and it's a pretty, I think, powerful demonstration that heroin will obliterate your ability to care for others. Yeah.
I know this will seem a silly argument to you, but some people who will watch the film and who are so abhorrent, find drug use so abhorrent, will say, the problem I have with a film like this is there is some romanticizing of it, and it is the reality that you see and the people who are on heroin see, but it tends to cause other people want to go experience that romanticism.
You have to admit that.
Yeah. Well, I think nothing...
Before you can start the discussion, I think.
You have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a possibility somebody will do that.
Well, I think nothing will persuade people who view the film in that fashion to change their minds. I mean, we didn't set out to encourage people to take heroin, of course, and we have met large numbers of people who've felt totally repelled by the portrayal of the drug in the film, in the sense that made them want to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
So,
what happened to make heroin usage become so popular again? Or am I wrong, we just didn't hear about it?
I think it's such an awesome kind of drug, which fortunately only a very small number of people ever get involved with. I think it's always there, really, and what tends to change is the media tend to focus on the kind of tip of the iceberg. The iceberg always floats there, unfortunately, I think that's the nature of it as a drug, really. I mean, it probably changes through supply and demand and those factors, world factors, but I think it's always there with you.
The heroin, the period that Irvin's writing about in Edinburgh in Scotland, where the book is set and the film is set, was extreme heroin use. It was also the beginning of AIDS in Scotland at that time, and Edinburgh became the capital of Europe of AIDS
and heroin usage.
And heroin usage. But now there's no heroin there at all. Nobody knows why.
Nobody knows.
But Glasgow, which is perhaps the city where you would expect it to be, which is the sort of Detroit of Scotland or whatever, the industrial city, which has been ravaged by closing of industrial works, it's rife. It's terrible. Absolutely, it's a real problem. But Edinburgh, it's not. No.
Are you three going to always work together? Is there some magic here about this trio?
I don't know. I'm a bit worried. You've separated us. That's so we're over there.
That was our time request.
Oh yes,
it's a Braveheart business.
Yeah. It's a Braveheart business, right? I mean, after you said that,
we've enjoyed working together, and we're planning to make another film this year.
A comedy, may I suggest?
Yes.
We're in real danger of
a romantic
comedy. Yeah.
Danger of glamorizing romance.
Yeah. Is this out of Hollywood or is this out of Europe?
It's out of both.
Both.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make. We're bringing our sort of principal crew, and Ewan McGregor, who was in both the films.
Right.
And he's going to fall in love in the story with an American girl.
Cameron Diaz.
Oops. I've not said that.
Don't think they've done the deal yet. Oh dear.
An exclusive on that channel.
And the film is called A Life Less Ordinary.
That's right.
All right. It's great to have you guys here. Thank you very much for coming by.
Thank you.
Trainspotting. Everybody's talking about this film. It's being written about here. This happens to be Time Out, but if you look at New Yorker, New York Magazine here in this city, and Time and Newsweek, they're all talking about it. Everybody has an opinion about it, and when there is that much talk, most people want to go find out what all the conversation is about. Trainspotting is the film. We'll be right back.